I have governed heaven and earth. Man or god, each is heard. Their anger, their pain, and in their time of need, I rise. Alona! So when the day comes that they ascend to the heavens, the rewards that await are not of silver or gold, but jade.
Hello, SMITE fans, and welcome to another fantastic Friday of SMITE Esports here for the SMITE Masters event. It is day number 2 of our 2-week-long event. Day number 1 had a lot of action. We'd already sent 2 teams home and 2 teams to move on into our 3rd day of play. We're going to find 2 more teams today to meet them up and play up against each other tomorrow on. Before we get on to that, though, my name is J-Mac. I got Ro joining me here on the desk for our start of our day. I know we ended the day together. Now we get to start it right back up here. It was a lot of fun yesterday. We had 2 North American teams end up moving on from the SEC. Now we've got 2 more NA and 2 more EU teams to face off today.
Yeah, we're seeing if Europe can bring it home and make it 2-2 to the next days of the tournament. I think we've got some stiff competition. Obviously, Europe, first seed NA, is playing up today, so now's their big chance if they need to make it to the next day.
Yeah, I mean, we saw yesterday where the number 1 NA team did have a fall to the number 4 EU team at the very start of the day, but then realized, okay, we probably need to step it up and end up taking that win at the very end of it all there. As I said, we had the Wardens, and then we also had the other opposition there with the NA side, Elders Hounds, who were able to move on for the North American ones. Unfortunately, that did send the Ravens and the Gilded Gladiators back home. So they're done, which means we do have 2 more NA and 2 more EU to face off on today's matchup. That first one is obviously going to be here between the Wargs and the Yomi Tanuki, but we got a lot of action to go through. If you missed the format of how everything goes, I'll give you a very quick rundown. We'll do 2 best of 1s. Winners of each will face off. Losers of each of those will face off in best of 3s after. The winner of the first one moves on. They advance to Group 3. The winner of the losers will then move on to face the loser of the previous one. Then they'll face off, and we'll send somebody out. So there's your quick, brief synopsis. It'll make a lot of sense as we go through. It's going to be the exact same format that we saw just yesterday. So if you did tune in yesterday, it's going to be the exact same, just different teams this time.
That's right, and I think the best one's pretty exciting. You can bring any strategy you want. You just need to get that one win, and then you move on, right? So that's, bring your cheesy strategies, bring your secret picks out, your hidden strategies, and then go into a best of 3 where it's now grit that matters. You bring a strategy from what you've seen from the previous day. You've seen from yesterday's European and NA teams bringing out their new picks in this new meta. So learn from that. We saw the Wardens have quite a lot of success with their own style in terms of objective DPS and just kind of pressure, which we didn't expect. We expected longer games in this new meta. So yeah, now we're going to move on to the Wargs, and yeah, you can take it away.
Yeah, I mean, the Wargs and the Tanuki are going to be our first matchup of the day. And kind of talking about the Wargs here, that number 1 EU team, unlike the Eldritch Towns, they didn't go undefeated throughout their season, did have 1 set, ended up losing out there just on the grand scheme. But, I mean, this is a very powerful, a very tenured team over across the board. I mean, Kana, Sarpei, Angry, Preds, and Spudio to fully round out this roster here. A lot of tenure amongst this name. The dual lane between Preds and Spudio is one that's definitely been showing up to impress throughout the entirety of the phase.
We saw a very strong start from Europe yesterday, so we'll see if we can see it today. Today is their number 1 seed, right? And they took it. Their number 4 seed took it to a number 1 NA seed yesterday. So we'll see if maybe NA can reverse that and number 4 beats number 1 again. But we got some players playing on ping. I think today I would believe it is Angry, who we don't have in the studio. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe it is Angry, the mid laner here for the Niflheim Wargs, who is going to be playing from home. The rest of the team and all of the opposite side here at the Yomi Tanuki are going to be playing here in the studio. And I think it's important to kind of talk about Angry a little bit here in this mid lane. He has been a player that over the last couple of years of the SEC has one that I've really been keeping my watch on and really kind of keeping my sights on more than anything else, because it was a player where whenever he kind of made his big break into the SEC, a lot of teams were kind of just looking past him. They're thinking, oh, it's just whatever. It's just Angry here in the mid lane doing its own thing. But he always ended up being a real silent carry for his team.
Yeah, he's kind of just been consistently good and then consistently getting better as well. This incremental improvement over the years in the European SEC. Looking at his recent games, a lot of Thoth, a lot of Tiamat. Merlin is still his most played god, which, if he does struggle with the higher ping today, that's some big circles that he can use. But looking at his KDAs as well, very clean play out of the mid lane for him.
Yeah, Angry's typically one who's able to keep to that back line, and it's a team and a player specifically that's able to sit in that back line so comfortably, sit there and be able to free cast on so many of those gods, like the Merlin, as you talked about being his most played. And that's one that I always really associate with him. So even when these metas change up, when gods kind of fall in and out of the favor, in and out of the meta here, he's always able to kind of bring that Merlin back for himself.
That's right, and we've talked about it a little bit. He's been around for a while, so he's got a deeper god pool if he needs it. If he wants to move on to the Hunters, like we've seen some other teams run the double Hunters, maybe he picks up the AMC, the Ula, and things like that. I trust that he'd be able to make an impact on any of those gods.
They're going to be going up against the Yomi Tanuki, the North American 4th seed coming out here, and a little bit of a struggle for this team throughout the phase. They're able to find a couple of wins throughout to be able to secure themselves this seed. They have made a slight change up to their roster here. They still got Snatty, Satadragon, Tripno, and Hydrogen, but Elion is now joining the support role for this team. And Elion is one of those players who always is flipping around trying to find where he can fit into a team, but he's a player with that level of talent that he's able to slot himself into just about any spot that he needs on a squad.
Yeah, and there's a reason he keeps getting picked up. The number one thing that he brings is great shot calling and great energy, and those are probably the two most useful things, apart from consistency, that you want to bring to a LAN environment. So jumping onto this team just before the LAN should be a huge buff to them. They get the honeymoon phase of, oh, we've got this new player, this new energy, this new positivity on the team, and now he's in a support role as well today, so we can see what kind of shot calling he can bring for his team. We saw Sino in the jungle yesterday calling these objectives with these like executioner style junglers. We'll see if maybe they run a similar jungle on like Satadragon and then call objectives on like Elion could call the objectives and zone and things like that. So I think strong shot calling is what we're going to see from him, and then consistent play from the rest of the team. I've heard good things about Hydrogen. I've seen great things about Snatty and Ranked, and Satadragon and Tripno have always been consistent to me too.
Yeah, I think having a very strong shot caller in your support role via Elion is definitely going to be a massive improvement for this team. And having Satadragon kind of be a little bit of that theory crafting behind the team. I mean, he's able to come up with new ways to kind of get his team advantages in the early game. And now that we are on this new patch, the early game has kind of changed up a little bit, and it's still fairly important to make sure that you are getting that farm, getting that XP, to make sure you can get your early levels. That way you can survive once you start getting to these 25, 30-minute points. And that's kind of been our average hit point so far this week, or at least in our first day of play, has just been making sure that you can get to your 25 and get that team fight ready.
Yeah, and speaking of like creativity as well, we've seen Elion play multiple roles now. So when you have experience in multiple roles, you have experience in very deep god pools of Guardians. And we've seen him play Guardians in mid lane in terms of like Sylvanas, for example. So if it's time for him to be creative in a new meta, then we could see like some of the most creative picks out of him, out of anyone in the tournament so far.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen a ton of wild picks out here just in our first day of play. I got to imagine here in day number 2, that's going to continue that trend. I mean, going from seeing gods that we saw like, one time last phase, and it was kind of usually on like maybe a sillier kind of a game where it didn't have as much impact, or teams were just kind of making experimentations, things like Opwash, Vulcan are gods that we hadn't really seen a whole lot of last season. Already have seen some of those kinds of plays come through here via the way of Moswall just yesterday on. So should be a very exciting week, and 2 weeks, I should say, ahead here as teams continue to experiment on this new patch.
Yeah, I mean, their goal is just to make it the next day, like run one step at a time at this point. They'll skip a day, if they make it through today, they'll skip to, I guess the NA teams and the NA teams from yesterday skipped to the Saturday, and then this team is trying to make it to the next day as well. But we'll see, I guess. We saw 2 NA teams make it, and we've got 2 new European teams today, including the first seed. So technically, I guess their chances are better if you look at statistics-wise, because the Wargs were a very dominant team. We're talking about Angry, who's been a very dominant mid laner in terms of his KDA, and then every other player is now here in the studio. I don't think they have too much LAN experience. I think I've seen, I would say, Spudio the most out of all of them, but they're all here today, apart from Angry, so they can make a good impact.
And we did get a chance to sit down and talk with these teams a little bit before we got to jump into their sets. And we do have a couple of interviews prepared for you guys to listen to, so we'll go ahead and take a listen to those.
We were not expected, I think, to make SEC at first, so we had a really tough bracket getting into the SEC, but once we made it, I think we started to gel together, and now I'm really happy with where we're at.
I think we started the year pretty well. Had a bit of a slip up right at the end against Hex Mambo, but I think generally our performance has been pretty good.
Looking at improvements our team needs to make right now is really just practice together, especially on this new patch. We had a support change, bringing in Leon, so just figuring out how we want to play the map with him.
I think some improvements we need to make are around objectives and get a little bit sloppy at times. And then another improvement would be probably comms and get a little bit messy and cluttered at times.
Playing against the Wargs, I think we're really banking on our experience together, even though it's somewhat limited. We have some janky picks, especially for myself. I'm really excited to pick it, so we'll see how it goes.
Against the Yomi Tanukis, I think we should comfortably win, although I don't want to sound too confident, but I think if we don't make any early mistakes, we should easily win.
The standout player for the Wargs, I would say, right now is Predators, but it might be Angry. It's hard to tell. I'm looking at both of them.
One player I've seen that stands out the most from the few games that I've watched the Tanukis play is probably Snaddy in solo. He seems to not carry his team, but he seems to do well in most games. I think in this tournament, I would be disappointed if we weren't to make it at least to the SPL teams. I think we should be coming top 2 out of all the SC teams.
Winning. We're gonna win. We're gonna finish this tournament winning.
I like the confidence that's coming from both of those players out there. Snatty saying, you know, we're coming out here to win, and I think that's what a lot of these teams out here want to do. And then at the same time, you know, for Spudio saying, you know, we're the #1 seed for a reason. We should be able to win this matchup. We'd be disappointed if we didn't. And they at least want to make it at the very minimal to the SPL teams here, but they do have to go through some fierce competition in order to do so.
Yeah, look, we're seeing different kind of confidence. One team wants to win the entire thing. I'm assuming he was talking about the full 2 weeks, which is ambitious, but
That's
hey,
very.
I'll take it. And then Spudio trying to make it to just the SPL teams, but also kind of, you know, confidence in that he said we've watched a few games of this, so I don't know, maybe not doing quite enough research, I would say. And he's talking about, you know, weaknesses in that team maybe being comms and maybe being, you know, a play around objectives. I think both of those things, well, comms definitely important on LAN and objectives definitely important, well, more important in 9.5 than what they were in the previous patches. So if they've clean those 2 mistakes up, and again, they said, you know, one of their other issues might be making mistakes in the early game. If they don't do that, then maybe they'll be, you know, sitting comfy today.
It's going to be very important for both of these teams to make sure that they are keeping on top of those objectives. We've already seen quite a few objective steals just in our first day of play, and communication is definitely going to be a very important factor for everybody out here. But I also want to kind of pick apart one little thing that Snatty said. He's got some very kind of a very spicy pick that he's ready to bring out in solo lane and to show us. I wonder if he's going to bring that out here in just this best of one, or if he's going to maybe save that.
Yeah, he said pick it, so it looks like just one pick. So hopefully he doesn't show his cards too early. But I mean, that's what best of ones are best for, right? You just, you know, throw that one pick down, it can change the game, and then all of a sudden you've won the set, which is just one game. So we'll see if he brings it up.
Yeah, he's playing high card, low card, holding on to like an 8 or something like that, and hoping that somebody has something a little bit under that case.
And who knows? He could be bluffing. He might not have anything, and everyone's just waiting for it and being ready for this one ban that they're going to need to bring out, and they don't need it in the end. So he just gets the other team thinking. It's great.
Playing a bit of that reverse psychology with not just us, but not just the fans, and maybe even the enemy team up against them there. But I mean, the Yomi Tanuki, as it's mentioned, they've had a little bit of struggles to get here. They did have a loss to the Sages earlier on in the phase. They had a 2-0 loss to the Hounds to kind of round out their SCC. So a little bit of a difficult path, and then even a loss to the Storm at the very start of the season there. So the Yomi Tanuki have been having some struggles, but having a new support jump in with Elion means that it's definitely going to be a little bit different for this squad more than anything else. Having this veteranship of Elion, even though Elion hasn't had, I'm gonna say he hasn't had success throughout his competitive career, but maybe hasn't had like the exact bit that he is needed out there. But being able to come through multiple roles, as you highlighted there, between jungle, mid, and now support, having that veteranship for as long as he's been able to play, for the flexibility of his god pool, is going to be a massive boon for his team.
Yeah, I mean, and just in that interview, you can tell the new energy he's brought to that team. That's a team that was struggling throughout the year, and yet they come to the biggest tournament so far for them, and they're actually confident, you know, and confident up against the #1 EU team, no less. So, you know, clearly he brings some kind of positive vibe and brings a new energy to a team, and I think he does that, especially on LAN. If we're watching cameras, that's who we want to be watching, especially, you know, if they win, he's, you know, Kuro Fred-esque getting up, punching a chair, you know, that's him as well.
We know how sturdy those Max Knock chairs are, so if somebody does end up punching one, hopefully they'll be able to withstand the blow of that one. But out here between these two teams, Niflheim Wargs versus the Yomi Tanuki. As said at the beginning and at the top of the day here, this is just a best of one. This is no elimination for this match and the next one coming up. The winner of this set and the next one will face off against each other and put themselves only one best of 3 away from being able to qualify. So finding a win here means you're guaranteed that you need to basically play less sets because you just need to win one more in order to qualify to the next day. Whereas if you lose this one, you're going to have to play at least the 2 sets in order to get there.
Yeah, so pretty important to win this best of one. And hey, that's what might be the biggest reason we see that, cheesy pick or that spicy pick that he's got coming. Maybe it's that Osiris we saw banned a lot yesterday. We didn't see any Osiris played. We just saw it banned, and it was banned like without much thought either. So just taking it away from it's been seen in the NA scene from Hounds, for example, for some reason. Maybe it was the Tanuki that were pulling it out. Maybe it's that spicy pick that no one wanted to deal with so far.
Maybe so. I mean, we haven't seen a good bit of change-ups to the meta so far with the 9.5. We've seen a lot of changes up to the picks and bans. Jingwei has risen to the top of priority amongst the Hunter list. Rom and Chernobog kind of seem to be those 2 that immediately jump back down right after that. And I'm very sure that Spudio and Hydrogen would both be more than happy to get one of those top 3s. We've even seen the Baron Samdi make his way up to the top of the charts, even going so far as to being first picked and first banned by so many teams.
Yeah, I mean, very strong pick in the solo lane. So we'll see if they can, bring it out today. I think it's a pretty easy god to pick up and put in your god pool, especially when you get the hammer. So we can move on to picks and bans and see if they value it, just like these other teams have.
Yeah, picks and bans. Game number 1 of the best of 1. So the only one that we'll see between these 2, at least for now. Maybe we can have a moment like we did yesterday where our first and last set feature the same 2 teams out here. And that's kind of the importance of making sure that you kind of win these first ones, is so that you maybe don't have to play all the way until that 5th set, because if you lose set 3, you got to wait for that one to play through, wait for set 4 to go, and then 5. And that fatigue really starts coming in for some of these players who aren't as used to being on this LAN environment. But as our first picks and bans are coming through, Kali, Hell, and Ul all going to be taken away by the Niflheim Wargs. Meanwhile, opposite side, the Tanuki will take away Baron, Yamoja, and Jingwei. Really no surprises, and maybe the only shocking one here is kind of that Uller ban.
For your
Yeah,
death?
I mean, all I'm seeing is they came really quick. They had decided exactly what they wanted to ban. Each team didn't care what the others banned. They just banned their 3 gods, and first pick a cleaner.
100% pick ban rate on Kleena, but only a 50-50 as far as her wins are concerned. But still, even in the one game that Kleena did lose yesterday, top of the damage charts, pretty solid slash line coming that way as well. So can't be too upset about that one. Chernobog, though, will make his way onto the draft here for the Yomi Tanuki. One of those 3 hunters that I was kind of mentioning about earlier was really risen up. And now we get to see, we've been seeing consistent bans on this god. Now we finally get to see why Osiris has been so heavily prioritized by teams.
Yeah, and at this point, I think put it 50-50 between the jungle and solo lane. I mean, the Baron ban is a meta ban, but also it's a very good matchup into an Osiris solo, so that may give more information. That's why they first banned the Baron, because they want to pick this Osiris. And so far, if you were to ask me on my very small amount of information, I guess it was Hounds screaming Tanuki, and they didn't like playing against the Osiris, so they spam banned it yesterday. But now we get to see what it's made of.
Hopefully we get to see exactly why this god has had so much priority on its bans. Looking to the opposite side here, the Wargs are currently hovering Sylvanas. We saw a little bit of Sylvanas yesterday with Rotwin. Wasn't able to quite find a win out here. But the level of control, the sustain that's come out here, and healing that's become such a prevalent thing now, which is why we're seeing gods like Hell banned away, and even Yamoja on the flip side here. Sylvanas really starting to make a name for himself in this meta.
Yeah, already some anti-heal that's going to want to come out of the Tanuki, because, I mean, they have anti-heal in Osiris ult, but usually it's, you can't get it. You can maybe get it on 2 targets if you're lucky, and all of these gods on the enemy team will have some kind of healing. Izanami will no doubt be having Devour's gauntlets and healing a lot with those crit auto attacks. Sylvanas is too, Cleaner, and the Soul Eater.
I'm wondering maybe if even the Sylvanas is to try and help with some of that extra wave clear. Now that those minions are a lot tankier, being able to have somebody hit all of those minions. Same kind of maybe thought process here with the Izanami with those cleave autos. I mean, that's going to be a dual lane that should get pressure in the early game, if I'm imagining.
They will have pressure, yeah. Their fight isn't amazing, but they can certainly poke and heal back up and repeat. I would imagine they should just be able to outclear and move into the jungle and take that small XP lead. Maybe they can pressure the mid lane a little bit with the wave pressure that they do have. But, Chernobog, not too bad clear on his own. We'll see. I mean, who knows? It could be an Osiris support. That might take it to a Sylvanas. We don't know yet.
I do see Jormungandr locked in. Normally reserved over for the European side of play. Players like Mogao and whatnot, and even Kana sometimes do like to play this god over in that role. We did see a more mage-style Jormungandr the first time that he came through. Not quite the same level of success, but now with the Jormungandr and the Osiris locked in here, seems to me this Osiris might be going over towards the jungle.
I'd imagine so, yeah. Unless it's the support, like I said, that would be spicy. So if that's what they're talking of, then sure. Jormungandr, somebody who can apply anti-heal very well, and you can start that tainted. If he needs to clear, you can move into a divine at some point, but generally his clear is pretty good with the auto attacks, or the breath, I should say. So I don't think he'll struggle too much in that regard. I do think he should go more of a tanky build, so he can apply this anti-heal more often. You know, E-Staff is great. You can apply that whenever you need to and just steal the enemy's HP.
Poseidon has become a very popular god in the last day of play. Yesterday, I mean, we saw so many different games of Poseidon, whether successful or unsuccessful. Did definitely see a lot of priorities. So seeing a ban here by the Yomi Tanuki at the very least. And following up with a Kabrakan, a god who, in theory, should do pretty well against a couple of these squads here. I mean, Chernobog can't get past the Kabrakan wall. He'd have to break it down. Same thing with the Jormungandr here. So far, looking at these top three, though, I mean, just in the first round of the picks here, you have any clear advantage as far as the draft is?
I think we need to see a little bit more anti-heal out of Tanuki in order to deal with what the Wargs have so far. They've banned away the Kabrakan on the Warg side. I think it is good because a Kabrakan can basically lock down whoever they want on the enemy team. Only the Izanami who can dash over that walls, but the Sylvanas can only peel with himself with the ult because the Kabrakan is usually root immune in that one, and Cleaner will struggle against those walls as well.
We do have Rom and Ares, the final bans, before we jump into the second wave of picks here. Now, this Kleena, we've been seeing mostly solo lane out of this god as of recent times. Still does have flexibility into jungle, so maybe seeing what else will come about here for the side of the Tanuki before maybe slotting that one in. Now with the Hou-Yi and Chernobog between these two, it means one of these guys is probably going to be having to go over to the mid lane. You have any preference on which of those two you throw in that lane?
I've always liked Chernobog mid, but Hou-Yi can work as well. I think it's really down to the player. I think to be picking the Hou-Yi in a very high-stakes game like this, you have to be a Hou-Yi player. I see it the same way as like Ula. You just have to be great at hitting those ones, get that CC off, and you can hit the rest of your auto attacks. So I think Chernobog can have success, but you could also just put him in the duo lane. He can fly over to the solo lane, for example, his Jormungandr. It looks like in general, you know, Osiris, pretty high pressure in the jungle. Jormungandr usually pretty high pressure in solo lane. You could fly over a Chernobog to that lane as well, and you can kind of just run it down that lane if you wanted to. So that might be their draft for now, and you know they might just let this Sylvanas and his army on the other side. You know what? You can push the duo lane, Chernobog. I'll sit under my tower and I'll fly over when I need to.
Well, we'll have to see where it lines out. Probably whenever we get into the game at the very least here. The Wargs are taking a few more moments to get their final two picks. Mid laner needed, and that will be Thought, so a little bit of long-range artillery in their kit. And now either their jungle or their solo, depending on where this Kleena is going. With only a few more seconds on the clock, the Wargs are waiting to see what that final pick of theirs is going to be. And with that Thanatos locked in, it seems as this Kleena will be making her way over towards the solo lane.
Yeah, pretty traditional comp from Wargs. I guess, you know, Thoth a comfort pick. I don't know how much they've played Thanatos themselves, but, you know, a strong pick with the Cleaner as well. A lot of poke on that side so they can get closer to those execute ranges. Jormungandr as well, a god that will struggle into Thanatos. You kind of have to all in as Jormungandr, so you can't help from getting low health. And a Xingqian, you know, I don't know which one of these was a spicy pick. Maybe it's the Osiris like we were talking about, and it was the jungle pick for them. I would imagine this is a Xingqian support into the Sylvanas.
Xingqian to round out the Yomi Tanuki's roster. So, either a Xingqian support with Chernobog or Hou-Yi matching up against the Sylvanas Izanami lane. We talked about how the Sylvanas Izanami should be able to get that early pressure over in the duo lane. But let's talk a little bit maybe more on the Thanatos. When we saw it in the matchup against an Ao Kuang yesterday, execute for execute. And for my money's worth on here, it feels like executes are maybe more valuable in this meta now that everybody's got more HP to try and burn through, more protections. Being able to kill somebody at a guaranteed, 30 or whatnot percent seems to be pretty valuable.
That's right, yeah. 30% is still 30%. It doesn't matter how much health there is on the enemy god, right? So, in a way, a small buff for executes, you could say. I think he could struggle up against a Xingqian. You know, Xingqian, someone that can get on him and just, like, force that ult, which we saw yesterday, you know, the Thanatos from yesterday getting his ult forced all the time. And then you can't end up using it aggressively at all. Xingqian also somebody that can, you know, threaten the Thoth and the Izanami. Both don't have CC immune ults, so should be able to force their beads whenever they want. So this team, the Yomi Tanuki, might live and die by their Xingqian. If he can force a lot of relics, he can force that Thanatos ult as much as possible, then they can keep the momentum going forward. You know, with their generally high pressure comp, maybe they can run it down the early game.
Maybe so here, but I mean, when we're looking at these two teams and talking so much about how we try and push towards 25, 30 minutes when we're finally starting to get some of these 6 items online, when it comes to that point of the game, Ro, I mean, which of these teams has that advantage? Does the Tanuki have the better scaling late game, or do you give that one over to the Wargs?
I think it's pretty even late game. I think it's just going to depend on whose side lane goes better and whose side lane gets more out of their pressure. I would expect this Jormungandr to get a decent amount of pressure. You know, he might struggle a bit when Cleaner gets that Solly to sustain online because his poke won't matter as much. Whereas on the Warg side, Izanami and Sylvanas are going to have that lane pressure. Their clear is just too high, but does it matter when a Chernobog can just sit on the tower and fly to whatever relevant fight there is on the map? We'll see.
We'll have to see when it comes to those ones here. The Thanatos is one I'll definitely keep my eye on, a bit of a feast or famine style of God. You get the ball rolling early, get some of those early kills. I say that, but then I remember the infamous Rapio play where he went like 17 minutes doing 0 player damage for the entirety of the game and then like essentially pentakills the enemy team to help win his team out on that one. So definitely keep the eyes on the jungle matchups here between this Osiris, between this Thanatos, to maybe see who can get the ball rolling early. If you're on the side of the Wargs, which of those lanes, though, do you try and put that pressure? I mean, you know you're going to get the duo pressure, but for this Thanatos, where do you try and put that attention to get advantage?
I think, the strong lane on Tanuki is the solo lane. So if you're the Wargs, you want to stomp that out and make sure that they don't get their advantage over there. They're pretty much guaranteed to get duo pressure anyway, so I don't think you need to put any more resources over there. So I think, spread yourselves out, let the Sylvanas and the Izanami do their thing, take the pressure to the Jormungandr. If a Jormungandr doesn't get ahead and doesn't get snowballish, he never really snowballs completely, but if he doesn't snowball too much, then, that's one of their biggest win conditions shut down.
I mean, one of the things that you were talking about here was the application of anti-heal going up against this team between the Sylvanas. Now that you have the Thanatos there, some of that self-sustain. The Jormungandr with things like the Tainted Steel, we even saw Divine Ruin occasionally come up with him. Do you think that with this Hou Yi and the Xingqian, they have extra ways to maybe try and get that anti-heal out there?
Not so much from those gods, but I imagine, Osiris might pick up a Brawlers or something like that. We'll see. His auto attacks can reduce anti-heal with other items, and then his ult as well.
Well, let's jump right into game number 1 here between the Wargs and the Tanuki.
A game to launch up at the start of day number 2 here at SMITE Masters. Joining me is Niflheim. What's up, Niflheim?
Hey, I'm here. I'm joining Blazy Bard, and,
Yeah.
and that's the extent of it.
That's everything. So is this when I ask you once again to break it down for me?
I suppose you just did regardless, so
Yeah.
I will endeavor to do so. Looking at these two drafts, the thing that stands out to me, and I think maybe that's why Ro had difficulty discussing whether or not one team had an advantage in the late game, is that if we were to evaluate raw scaling, I'm not certain that either one of these drafts is going to feel significantly stronger than the other post 30 minutes. But the conversation that I love to have is ease of play. Which one of these drafts is easier to execute on their strategy? And the composition with Double Hunter is always going to have a harder time finding those priority targets and allowing these hunters to have the space to play. Because when you look at the draft built around these two hunters, Tripno and Hydrogen, Leon's on Xingqian, Sada Dragon on Osiris, and Snatty on the Jormungandr, those are not your standard initiators. Osiris is great at creating space, and Jormungandr is to a certain extent, but Leon is really the core initiator for his team. And he's the only one. This Osiris isn't setting up, he's only creating space. This Jormungandr is not setting up, he's only creating space. So that means the Yomi Tanuki likely will struggle to connect with targets like Angry come late game, or put pressure onto Spudio himself. So although both drafts have similar strengths come late, maybe one is going to have an easier time applying them.
And talking about this Jormungandr already, yesterday we saw a little bit from one of the teams building into that really damage, Morgau in fact, building into that really damage-heavy Jormungandr. Already we're starting to see this kind of differential from Snatty building into that helmet here first.
Yeah, helmets I think should just be core on Guardians in the Soul Lane. All of them have got phenomenal stats. You're not really feeling the nerfs to bruiser items for Guardians like we saw towards the Warriors, so still going to be relatively tanky, have decent damage output, low odds that you fall in the lane, and even in picking up a helmet, you're essentially double dipping on defense as it is a physical soul laner as well as a physical jungler. So I love this pathing from Snatty, and as Rose said, if you want to apply anti-heal a little bit later, Divine Ruin is great.
Bit of an attempt here at a steal by Elion, but it's not going to be too successful. However, with the rotation here from Sharpay, he might be in some trouble, but the whiff of the scythe should make Elion be just fine there.
Yeah, I love that style of play from Leon. It's very reminiscent of what we saw towards the tail end of Season 6 from PBM, in that these Guardians, these supports can just play the oppressor, be aggressive, and sacrifice some of your own farm to either slow down your opposition or at least create a situation in which they are 3-splitting and getting inefficient gold experience, or spending more time defending, especially in 9-5, considering how survivable everybody is, but maybe specifically gods like Xingqian with all that HP 5, the double leap as well. I think that is a play that Leon is very much allowed to make, and in doing so, forces a 3-split on the purple buff and allows Hydrogen to solo his own. So now a slight golden experience advantage over to the Hou Yi. I expect to see a whole lot more of that. Even had the scythe connected from Sarpei, I'm almost
fine.
certain Leon just walks out.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? Like, Jing Chen, I think, is such an incredible pickup for this meta for exactly the reason you just touched on, right? This is a character who we've kind of seen drop in and out of the meta at various times, more out than in, though, I would say, at the very least. But this really feels like 9-5 could be the patch Jing Chen really comes in.
If Hunters are good, Jing Shen's Ferocious Roar is going to do a whole lot for him, removing some of those auto attack damage percentage as well as being as survivable as he is, so I agree. I do think I would prefer to see Jing Shen more often in support. We do generally see him locked in the Soul Lane, and over there, he's not really establishing pressure. He will eventually scale and become a secondary support, a secondary initiator for your team, but sacrificing side lane pressure, not necessarily the greatest. But when you've got him matched up with an ADC, the second ability from Jing Chen is just such a good facilitation tool, especially with Hou Yi, just inherent synergy there, locking one person down for long enough that maybe we see some pretty easy lineups from Hydrogen on double bounds or even triples.
I do want to touch on that, though, because really, when if we're talking about follow-up, off the back of the washing machine from Leon, what's really going to be the damage pool that they're landing into? Like, the Suns is a pretty decent one. Maybe Santa Dragon can time it up with the Lord of the Afterlife, but hold that thought over here on the right-hand side. And Leon, once again, attempting for that purple buff, but no such luck.
Yeah, not this time, but still putting some pressure and slowing down the purple one, stripping away Spudio's ultimate. So now Hydrogen might have an opportunity in lane where he can attempt to find a 1v1, but I think that's a good point you bring up, and that's partially what I was speaking about with ease of play. On initiation, maybe you're hoping that the follow-up on Whirlwind of Rage and Steel is just a phenomenal series of auto attacks from Tripno or Hydrogen. Maybe one of these hunters decides to pick up Odysseus Bow to spread damage evenly throughout a team fight. I'd be very surprised to see itemization continually be the same between Tripno and Hydrogen. One of them likely just can't build crit, because then you're just losing out so much to itemization.
So in that case, what is the ultimate pathing? Are we expecting maybe Hydrogen to build into more of a damage build? You know, for my money, I would say Hou Yi's maybe better off out of these two hunters building into that kind of more mace tree ability-based route.
Well, considering Hou Yi's second ability does more damage to whoever is lower HP in front of him, and some of the tanky targets he will be lined up against, Kana, as he gets further into the build and such, could create a situation where you would want Hydrogen to be the heavy hitter of the two. But considering Tripno's on Chernobog and objectives are so important, maybe you want him for it.
Spudio here caught out on the left-hand side without his dash available to him. Survives a lot longer than I thought he might have done, but that is going to be first blood in the way of Yomi Tanuki. A wonderful rotation from Santa Dragon and close that one out.
Hydrogen just using the ultimate to force out the leap, realizing that Santa Dragon was on the rotation in. Leap down on Spudio, and it's as simple as that. Sickle connects, and you're slowed just about indefinitely in that regard. So nice rotation from Santa Dragon on an Osiris jungle. You really want to get the ball rolling very quickly, especially with the itemization we're already seeing from Santa Dragon. That's not to say that he couldn't transition the build, but as of now, that's very high damage.
Sarpei also in some trouble here. Washing machine from Elion, not going to connect onto Angry. This time around, Santa Dragon already using the Lord of the Afterlife, and that is going to force Sarpei to use that ultimate to get himself out of there. No trade so far in the mid lane other than those ultimate abilities for the junglers.
Great attempt from Anger to use his own ultimate to put that guy, to put Santa Dragon into execute range, but unfortunately just barely off the mark. Maybe one more auto attack would have found it.
And here's that first blood once again from Santa Dragon. Just this lack of wards from Spudio really catches him off guard here. You know, as you already mentioned, just the setup from the ADC here on Hydrogen to, you know, even commits the ult into that to really make Spudio go, oh, okay, I really need to get out of here.
Yeah, so that does open up the opportunity to potentially rotate back over. It's still 80 seconds left on Spudio, recovering his bead. So keep your eyes on Hydrogen. Hou Yi, certainly one of the best at exploiting that lack of CC immunity, not only in the relics, but also in the kit. So I am very interested to see whether or not Hydrogen keeps up this pressure. As of now, though, seems he's very willing to lock the wave to his own tower, forcing Spudio again into a poor position. This Izanami can't feel confident stepping this far up.
So talking about that crit here, and what we'll have to look at it in a second. We've got a little bit of a replay of Sarpei here up in that
Simple.
jungle. Again, yeah, just simple blink in, hits the scythe, Santa Dragon's dead.
Don't be low HP in your own jungle. The sense of death and the passive of Thanatos saying, okay, well, I can see you through walls if you're low HP, and Santa Dragon just trying to clear out a small camp, and not even a valuable one at that regard. So, massive loss to the jungler of Yomi Tanuki, and putting a Thanatos ahead never feels good for their opposition. Jotun's immediately into the hi-rez means that Sarpei's damage output is massive already. Getting percent penetration from his second ability as well means that whenever he is getting involved in these team fights, even as of right now, up against a Mannequin Scepter Osiris, this Thanatos might have the advantage.
Although looking at the build on the flip side here, Mifflin, look at Santa Dragon's second item here. Could this be a Witchblade?
Witchblade, potentially, I think that would help out a fair bit up against Sarpei as Leon gets involved, locking down Angry.
Angry's in a lot of trouble. No beads available for the mid laner from the Niflheim Wargs, and he's going to be the first one to fall down. But a three-man knock-up hit from Preds is going to lead into the ult onto Tripno. Sarpei falls down from the sky, and he's starting to chew through Santa Dragon as well. The damage is coming back around to him, though, and Sarpei might be the next one to fall. Scratch the might. He is. Preds also equally in danger. That's going to be a three-man kill swing in favor of Yomi Tanuki, and I think they can take this one straight to the bank.
Yomi Tanuki with the very telegraphed initiation there. Leon essentially chasing on his own for upwards of 4 to 5 seconds. Finally is followed up by Tripno's ultimate, and by then the Wargs have to realize, oh, this is not just Leon playing aggressively as he has been for the last 9 or so minutes. He's not just walking up to check our buffs. This is a tried and true initiation, and the Wargs a little bit slow on the uptake, rotate in essentially one by one, allowing the Yomi Tanuki to take artificially manufactured numbered advantage fights. That said, Snatty does make the rotation, and Kana just straight up doesn't. So that's always going to favor the team that rotates out their solo laner. But Kana does not do nothing on the map during that time. He's able to steal away a couple of the camps from the Tanuki on the right-hand side and make sure that his experience remains largely equalized.
But let's not, like, blow this out too much, Mifflin. Despite those 3 kills that just went the way of Yomi Tanuki, we can have a look at the graphs. They're only... Well, I mean, they're not even in the lead anymore. This is like a completely even game. So that 3-man kill they just got was literally just in favor of making the game even.
Yeah, but you got to talk about my friend Mo. Mentum and Leon certainly playing with it. Goes into the tier 1 tower despite the buffs to it recently. And as you can see, 2 shots doing nearly 50% of his HP bar, but goes rewarded, stripping the beads away from Angry. Now Santa Dragon gonna have a much easier time getting involved in the mid lane. This Thoth, who is largely gone untouched, barring one fight, can not really play as safe as he once was. He is gonna be very concerned about rotations and global presence from Yomi Tanuki. Namely, I'm thinking Tripno probably going to chase him out if he ever, Angry that is, decides to walk into the jungle.
And even then, with the beads down, Elion's ultimate is on a shorter cooldown, Mifflin, so we could see exactly what we saw just a minute ago. Next time that ability comes up, he walks straight into Angry's face, forces the dash, finds him again, and then scoops him up into the rest of his team. But for now, it's back to the waiting game. Elion making his way over to the right-hand side here alongside Tripno. They were looking to find Sarpei. They are going to force out that ultimate. Still looking to chase, and under the tower he's going to go. That should be all that Tanuki can chase out for now.
Tanuki 4-stacked on the right side of the map. At least Pred's able to resustain Sarpei a fair bit, and Thanatos passive should go a long way doing the exact same. So Tanuki not confident in their ability to look towards the Pyromancer despite a little bit of posturing. Pred's now caught in the jungle. Thought maybe we'd see Santa Dragon commit himself. And speaking of Santa Dragon, not a Witchblade pickup, instead it's the Toxic Blade. Worried about some of the healing from the Niflheim Wargs. Pred's obviously, Spudio with the Devourer's Gauntlet, and Kana with Soul Eater, all going to be mitigated by Santa Dragon once he does get involved. And even in not going for a bruiser-style item or a dedicated damage item, by nature of Tether for Osiris, he still is going to act as a very strong space creation tool. Santa Dragon, deceptively tanky right now.
But Snatty is going to be picking up the Witchblade here, definitely recognizing the danger that the auto-attacks from Spudio and Sarpei, but even from Connor, you know, clear auto-attacks are nothing to sneeze at. They're definitely going to start hurting, especially into that late game. Soul Eater already finished up for the solo laner from the Niflheim Wargs.
Yeah, so Snatty doing a whole lot for his squad now. And the Yomi Tanuki, it's very clear what the strategy is. They are playing tried and true aggression. They are trying to play anywhere on the map to find a lead.
Hydrogen does the same play, but in reverse this time around. Sarpei going to be the one trying to find him, but a Beads is going to stop that stun from the sky. And here come the rest of the Yomi Tanuki. Dragon and Elion making their way over to the left-hand side, trying to just repel this aggression. And, well, Sarpei's going to be straight up out of there.
Yeah, the Niflheim Wargs not going to overstay their welcome. Sarpei very quickly adjusting himself and leaving that side of the map. That's a heavy commitment, though, both hovering death as well as the blink from this Thanatos. So Sarpei gonna have to spend a little bit of time in the jungle just farming up while he waits for those resources to come back up. Whereas Sada Dragon, well, once he heads back to base, will have that second relic. Beads finished, Balance Blade picked up as well. Blink coming up in just about 10 seconds, and Ultimate available. This could be an opportunity for Yomi Tanuki to start leveraging some of that aggression that they've been playing through in mid. Pyromancer could be the option here. Snatty's been having a pretty decent time in lane, but still level disparity, kind of one up on the Jormungandr. Alternatively, could also start to look towards the Gold Fury, where Hydrogen has been getting the better end of that laning phase. Spadio has been largely playing either passively or inside of his own tower.
For sure, and you know, leveraging that aggression is well and good, Mifflin, but in reality, there's nothing really between these two teams in terms of experience or gold. You know, there's a level here or there, but for the most part, this is a dead even game, as I mentioned before. So realistically, what? Tanuki need to find a pick or two to be able to open up one of these objectives.
Or they just group up quickly and try and sneak one away. It's a triple auto attacker composition. Stone Cutting Sword for Sada Dragon, Double Hunter comp between Tripno and Hydrogen, and you've got a phenomenal steel wall frontline of triple tanks, Sada Dragon, Snatty, and Leon. So I think the Yomi Tanuki can at least try and heat check some of these objectives, whereas the Wargs have got better confirmation. If Angry's allowed to step up, the steal potential is certainly there.
Leon trying to get aggressive, just testing what the Niflheim Wargs are going to do to him, and the answer to that is not too much this time around. They don't want to commit too much to that heavy front line. No one really following up from behind, but the Wargs, I think Mifflin might be trying to do exactly what you described, looking towards the Gold Fury, seeing how the Tanukis are going to react, but it is just going to be an Oracle's pull.
Yeah, the Wargs would have a slightly harder time going for an objective. Their burn not quite as good, and their front line not quite as strong.
Two people knocked up in the mid lane. Santa Dragon and Elion already down to half HP, and up into the sky goes the Thanatos, landing straight back down to fell Elion. But coming from the sky as well is Tripno, trying to find some of this damage in return, but it is a 2v4 situation in the mid lane, and it looks like the Niflheim Wargs are going to pick up Elion and look for a Gold Fury.
Spadio maintains his ultimate, so still his greatest confirmation on the map belongs to the Niflheim Wargs. It's burning quickly, Gold Fury down to 50%.
Snatty's making his way in, and the spit is going to come through, but it's not going to be enough to steal away that objective. Snatty does make it into the ground, so he should be fine. But Mifflin, the first Gold Fury of the game, is blue.
Niflheim Wargs got the first significant gold advantage as well, now nearly 1,000. And that's just the Yomi Tanuki getting a little bit over-aggressive. Leon, I suppose, became a little bit too used to his ability to just walk in and then walk out right afterward. Gauntlet of Thieves, Spirit Robe, and Jingshen Double Leap, I suppose, is a crazy drug. You're just feeling really good about your opportunities, but gets caught out. Phenomenal ultimate from Sarpei to wait out the double leap. And from there, the Niflheim Wargs able to leverage the healing from Preds to disengage, heal up, and get themselves over towards the neutral.
Tanukis don't want to give this one up for free, though. They know that the ultimate is down from Angry, and this should be a free Pyromancer for them. So a little bit more evening out just that gold lead. Still definitely favoring the Wargs. They're going to get a lot more money in their pockets from that Gold Fury. But now both of the main objectives are down. And Mifflin, I think the Tanukis are doing something pretty interesting here. Look at where they're keeping their trebuchets.
First off, Trebuchet. Secondly, agreed. Snatty, though, in some trouble. The Tier 1 tower. Kana and Sarpei not willing to commit themselves to that dive. Yeah, I suppose Yomi Tanuki just going to hold those there, wait, and could potentially use them essentially as Oni minion waves as they start to look towards Fire Giants or subsequent neutral objectives as they respawn Primal and Pyromancer a few moments away, about 3.5 minutes. So, curious to see how they play. Mid-Trebuchet released, though. Yomi Tanuki going to generate some pressure on the map.
I think maybe holding on to this left side full if they do want to go for that Fire Giant, or if they want to go and contest it if the Wargs want to push it up. As you said, having that Trebuchet there is really going to create a lot of pressure in the lane. And speaking of pressure, shuts up. Hey, where did he go?
He was eviscerated. That's what happens when you line up against an Osiris with that style of build. And, well, the Sada Dragon does a fair deal of damage on his way out. Sarpei not even able to channel the ultimate. So now the Yomi Tanuki in a 5 versus 4 with a Trebuchet in mid can start to work their way in towards this tower. Ultimate from Angry just to slow it down, and that's the value of a Trebuchet when you can't protect it. It's not doing a whole lot.
I mean, you say that Niflheim is going to get 2 shots off here, and the sheer amount of damage it's going to be doing to that tower, I think makes that completely worthwhile. And on top of that, they get the ultimate out of Angry. Now, sure, there isn't an objective on the map right now that's really going to help secure, but that's still a pretty big team fight ability to be off the board.
But what are you team fighting over now? You're not walking to the Fire Giant.
Okay.
Neither one of these teams confident in that. So I think perhaps holding on to the Trebuchet holds value unless Angry gets aggressed on shortly, but even that said, not really a whole lot of opportunity there. As the clock ticks onward, the 1,000 gold separating these two teams becomes closer and even switches sides, but 1,000 gold at 19 minutes is nothing. Not even an entire item. The only thing that's going to separate these teams now is perhaps ward advantage as we start to approach the Fire Giant. We're very quickly getting to the point of the game where both of these teams are going to have the Fuego on their minds.
About 3.5 items completed for each of these players now, so they've got a decent amount of stats under their belts coming into, well, I think during 9.5 we can consider this the mid-game, right? 20 minutes in?
No, we're late. This is late game.
Late? You think so?
Smite is so different than other MOBAs. I would argue early games, like the first 6 minutes, mid games all the way till like 18, and then we're in the late game. Because looking at the levels, laning phase is over. Everybody's already got their second relic available. Leon's been hovering the right side of the map more often than not. We are very rapidly approaching a 5-on-5 engagement. I'm thinking this next wave of neutral objectives is really going to start to mark the beginning of the end for both of these teams. Whoever's able to pick the next couple up is going to find themselves with a very significant advantage.
So it's the early late game.
Sure.
So we're gonna continue segmenting these further and further. So
Yeah, I'm not in the market of delineation as far
Right.
as time is concerned. But
Okay.
if you had to be early late game, I suppose a fine name for this.
Tanukis and the Wargs now grouping up around the middle lane. Santa Dragon, the first to receive some poke, but look at the wraparound from Elion, is going to scoop up Angry there, still holding onto the beat, and the dash is going to come through. Preds locked down in the Suns for just a moment there. Washing Machine comes through, forces the beats out from Sarpei, but look at this corridor.
Oh.
This is not what you want to be fighting a Thoth, and Elion takes half of his HP already. Tripno also in some trouble. Now Elion getting chewed through by Connor, the solo laner, and it's currently a miracle that no one died. Scrap that. Tripno gets caught out without the rest of his team, and that's going to be one pickup for the Wargs.
Angry is dropped low, as is Sarpei. Well, they know that Santa Dragon is incredibly low HP in his own right, but Hydrogen still hovering nearby. Should be able to buy a little bit of time for his team. Kana, very deep, but that god walks through walls, so should be just fine. Primal Fury still not on the respawn. Pyromancer going to come much after that. The Niflheim Wargs may have found a pick, but they might only be able to get a tier 1.
But that doesn't seem to be too much of a worry for the Yomi
Not either.
Tanukis. They don't want to push into this tower too much, do the Wargs. They're more than happy. They're just going to show some presence. So, I mean, yeah, I'll echo your words back at you, Niflheim. What were they really fighting over there?
Well, the Primal Fury was so short to respawn. It was about 5 seconds after they had found the kill. I think had the Wargs decided to just continually hover the jungle, they would have had the opportunity to pull the objective, especially considering Tripno had expended his ultimate during the team fight, just now respawning, just now starting to work his way out of base. The Niflheim Wargs could have potentially lost an opportunity there. Angry could have just reset back to base and then met his team at the Primal. Instead now, we're at a completely neutral state yet again, and it could even be the Yomi Tanuki with the defensive positioning advantage around the Primal. Everybody on the Wargs just now leaving base.
They are able to pick up the Oracles, and they're going to go straight onto the Primal Fury. It's already burning very, very quickly, but Spudio is here, and you have to respect Izanami ult when you're doing a Primal Fury, especially when Angry walks around the corner as well. Now, the positioning has completely changed. Spudio looking to potentially pull the Primal, but doesn't really want to commit that much onto it just yet.
Oracle Vision, all important at this point. There's no way the Niflheim Wargs commit to the objective itself. Despite having superior confirmation, they need to worry, the Wargs that is, about the global presence that Snatty has. If he sees that Primal Fury dropped anywhere below 50% HP, World Serpent's going to get you into that backline so quickly. The Niflheim Wargs, now in a position that they were just a couple moments ago, need to find that pick if they want an opportunity to look at this objective.
And Tanuki really need to avoid going into one of those short corridors like they did last time, blinking forward. Elion looking once again for Preds, is going to get immuned out by the ultimate, but that is going to be both supports now without the use of their 4 key. Leon, though, does take the worst trade in terms of his health, and up into the sky goes Sarpei, looking potentially for someone. Instead, hovering around towards Snatty, misses the ultimate because of the CCI from World Surf there.
Angry shoots off his own ultimate, trying to follow up on that stun. Snatty narrowly avoids the damage, but still is able to limp his way out. That said, the Wargs establish great positioning around the Fury.
But here comes Hydrogen, drops the Suns to just try and buy a little bit more time, but Wargs don't need to worry about that. They're going to pick up the second Gold Fury of the game. That's 2 for 2 for the blue team.
But Golden Experience still so even at this point. That Primal Fury, it's not about separation in builds. It's not about separation in levels. It's all about getting ready for subsequent Fire Giants.
But look at Connor's positioning here. Nearly kills Tripno from the wall. The power on this character is absolutely insane. But Wargs, they're not looking potentially just for one objective. They're looking for the mid tower as well. The Pyromancer is going to fall just after, and now Niflheim Wargs can start to back away. Dead even, basically, Mifflin, for the first 23 minutes of the game, and now take a look at that graph.
3,000 gold. I still might argue dead even, considering where we are in the match. Everybody's starting to approach level 20. I think that the Yomi Tanuki certainly down, but definitely not out at this point. But the issues that we were discussing about 24 minutes ago about these drafts come this portion of the game is starting to rear its head. The Yomi Tanuki are struggling so much to find their initiation. It's almost resting entirely on Leon, and he's landing his ultimates, but nobody else can make use of those burnt beads.
Connor hanging out in the wall here, trying to do some damage to the carries rather than the objective. A half health on the jungler, and finally the Tanukis are able to find an objective. Jumping away is Soul Dragon, but Sarpei's there waiting for him. 1 kill down on the Yomi Tanuki, but they do walk away with 4, or potentially 3, depending on how well Snatty is able to get out. It looks like he's going to be just fine. So Mifflin, they lose Soul Dragon, but 4 people with the Fire Giant buff is not bad.
100% worth. You're feeling good even if you have to let this tier 2 tower go, which they might need to. The Yomi Tanuki sticking around 3 versus 5.
This tier 2 tower, though, is a pretty mighty structure. This team doesn't really have a whole lot of HP in the grand scheme of things, but Pred's looking to rectify that. That healing from Sylvanas is going to be so instrumental. Elliot going up, rooting Preds right into the Suns, and that's going to take so much of the tree out of this fight. And now Niflheim Wargs, they don't want to continue pushing into that any further. If Preds even so much as shows his face to Hydrogen, he's going to fall.
Yomi Tanuki from the brink had lost out on every single neutral objective, but that is 100% a bona fide El Leon call, saying, hey, the Niflheim Wargs, they're not on fire. Let's go ahead and pull it. Best case scenario, we get it, and that feels great. Worst case scenario, they force us off and we have to reset. So I think a very low risk play to pull out Fire Giant and a very high reward over to the Yomi Tanuki. And now, with Fire Giant, those concerns that I had about this composition's ability to take team fights in neutral territory are completely alleviated. We are no longer concerned about that because fights are no longer happening in neutral territory. The Tanuki with 4 Fire Giants can start to work their way across the map, sieging out 6 towers. And the Niflheim Wargs, the game is simplified now. It's not, hey, can we maybe target one guy and hope nobody's in the jungle? It's, hey, we're going to go into these towers and we're going to strip them, and either the Wargs put up a defense here or they're going to lose their structure. So we can see what a true 5-on-5 engagement looks like.
And pushing up that Trebuchet as well down the left lane. It's going to take a little bit more time, but it means that the Yomi Tanuki, now that they pushed up that wave, don't necessarily have to worry so much. Sarpei has to use that ultimate to get out back over towards the mid lane here. And now Tanuki, they've got a couple options here, Mifflin. They can stick with the Trebuchet and push down this left tier 2, or they can go to the other lanes and pick up some different towers.
With Thanatos ultimate down, I like this call. 4-1 split with Sada Dragon down mid. This Osiris is not concerned whatsoever with the damage output of Thanatos. With both ultimates down, it should favor Osiris every single time. So in a 4-on-4, one team's got Fire Giant, so you got to think that's the one with the advantage.
Connor off the mark with that first tick of the ultimate, trying to just do a little bit of damage here, but not quite really able to find much. The Trebuchet is lining up. It's going to be able to get about 1 shot off, and this is the tower that the Trebuchet isn't really going to do too much to. Just a little chunk there at the top. But Tanuki, they don't really feel like pushing this objective too much.
Surprised to see that, considering all the resources available to Tanuki at this point. Most ultimates available, every single set of beads up, only 1 relic down, and that's the Aegis for Snatty. And we're not so concerned about Snatty's survivability anymore. Ethereal Staff finish, Spectral as well, and I would argue his ultimate can act as a secondary Aegis. Instead, though, the Yomi Tanuki, with an entire minute left, decide to reset. That said, they don't walk away empty-handed. They are able to strip away 2 Tier 1 towers in both mid and left. Sada Dragon soloing his, as Sarpe was not willing to step up and defend. But I really think that Tanuki could have at least tried a little bit harder to pepper some damage into that Tier 2, potentially look for some poke, but it's never an easy task to siege up against a Thoth. Angry was doing a whole lot of damage from a range that Yomi Tanuki could not play from.
Not a lot of time left on this Fire Giant buff for the Yomi Tanuki. They're going to try for a Primal Fury while they still got it, but Niflheim Wargs definitely not going to allow them to push that advantage for free. I'm worried here, Mifflin, that the Yomi Tanuki are playing a little bit scared.
Well, cautious, I suppose, but I would echo that sentiment. I feel like they could have gotten a bit more with that Fire Giant siege. Niflheim Wargs now still nursing a small advantage, will try and pull out the Primal Fury. It's up to the Tanuki to work their way forward, and they're going to have to do it soon. That's burning fast.
I don't think they're going to want to here. I mean, worst case scenario, this is just a Primal Fury. It's not a huge deal in terms of separating, but everyone's level 20 minus the supports. Final items are starting to be worked on. That golden experience difference is really starting to close up, and that Primal Fury is getting more and more advantageous, especially considering the Niflheim Wargs now have 2 of them. It's going to give them a lot of extra damage up against this Fire Giant.
This enhanced Fire Giant at that, 29.5 minutes in. I don't imagine the Fire Giant's going to die within 15 seconds of spawning. So Niflheim Wargs should feel a lot more confident in their ability to be here. That said, they are going to be second to the scene. Yomi Tanuki in range first, but it doesn't seem like they're willing to hold the defensive positioning. And Kana has got a sentry in his pocket, which he hasn't. Could just strip this away. Instead, has to wait for his team. Either way, though, having that ward is so important inside the Fire Giant pit. Now Yomi Tanuki are either going to have to fight into the Niflheim Wargs or just pray that it doesn't get pulled. Either way, it's going to be a face check.
Angry, just so powerful in these situations. That line that the Tanukis have to go into to try and to push on to this objective. It's going to make his damage so devastating. Connor now looking to put out some extra poke. Leon already just above half HP. That is a big chunk, but the HP 5 passive should be good. Pred's looking to find some pull in here. There's going to be 3 people hit with his ult, but he's going to get pulled straight back, and he's going to be the first casualty of War Down. He falls. Pred's in the ground. Dragon going to get landed on by Sarpe, but the damage isn't really there for him. Sarpe could be dead here, Mifflin. That's going to be 2, and the Tanukis find a huge upswing here.
That's the first time Snatty decided to get involved. He was the initiator in this team fight, and a triple knockup is all it takes to separate these engagements. Leon had been doing it all on his own for 30 entire minutes, and finally, with a little bit of help to get these fights started, the Yomi Tanuki find themselves in a significant advantage. 20 seconds left in the grayscale for Preds, 40 for Sarpe, and an enhanced Fire Giant on the map. But Angry still has ultimate. Kana is still dealing a whole lot of damage in his own right. The Yomi Tanuki are going to have to show some respect if they want to go for the objective.
And Angry is the big question mark in this equation. Spudio's ult does a lot of damage, but it's definitely something he has to get close in to confirm. Half HP already on the Fire Giant. Angry not charging his ultimate just yet. I don't think he has vision on it. And the steal from Connor isn't going to come through. Final Judgment does connect onto Snatty, but that is not a cause for concern for the World Serpent.
Well, maybe slight cause of concern, because that was a lot more damage than I was expecting from a partially charged ultimate from Thoth.
That's
dealing upwards of like 30% of Snatty's HP bar, but at the end of the day, it's a clean win for the Yomi Tanuki, picking up yet another Fire Giant for themselves. This time enhanced, no longer will have to concern themselves with these backdoor protections. Last time around, it was only 2 tier 1s that they were able to pick up. Now, 32 minutes in, you've got to think it's going to favor them a little bit more so. But the strengths that we saw on the last siege defense from the Wargs are still there. It is still going to be very difficult to fight into Angry. And if you need Snatty to be that initiator alongside Leon, the ability to do so is going to be mitigated inside of the tower range. Sure, the game simplifies, and it's going to be easier for Leon to find multi-man ultimates, but Snatty's stealth just does not exist inside of these structures. You're going to see him every single time. It's going to be a much more honest initiation from Yomi Tanuki. I think the Niflheim Wargs have still got some fight left in them, but it's all rooted around one player in particular, and that's Angry. This Thoth has to do the most.
Grouping up around the left tier 2 now. Trying to push onto that left Phoenix is going to be a huge boon for the Yomi Tanuki if they can make it happen. Angry, still the only one under tower, and Leon coming around for the wrap. Does a lot of damage to Snatty, but the Tanukis are able to pick up the tower at the end of the day. Preds forced to use the sprint, but
Why is he
Niflheim,
here?
yeah, he's absolutely dead here. No way.
He's out.
Okay, just about. Sorry, I said no way. There is one way, and that is if he used his ult, and I believe that was both of his relics as well.
Just the sprint this time around, but Fortifying Shell likely would have saved him either way. That is a heavy commitment, though. Losing your ultimate, losing that Entangling Wings is just going to make it so difficult now for the Niflheim Wargs to defend, and Dragon finds major value in just distracting an individual member of the Wargs. Tier 2 tower on left falls down. Tier 2 tower in mid gone as well. The Yomi Tanuki have exposed all 3 birds of the Niflheim Wargs and have still got a minute and a half to play with on this enhanced Fire Giant. Dragon doing his best to split up the map. It's a 3-1-1 with Snatty playing in mid, but I'm not certain that Snatty loves his odds in these fights. Every single time he steps up, Angry deletes half of them.
For sure not, but Angry's already expended his ultimate. That is a huge cooldown. Both him and Spudio now, no 4 keys available to them. That is a huge boon.
See ya.
And Tanukis are going to walk straight into the left lane here, pick up 1 set of Hot Wings. And you know what, Mifflin? That could be more Phoenixes if they can push in time before Angry and Spud's ults come back up.
I think so.
Whoa!
Tanuki dropped low, though. Angry might not have his ultimate, but he still has certainly got the damage. Dragon dropped down to 10%, and where's Sarpei? He's moving in aggressive.
Leon getting pulled back here by Preds could be devastating for him. Gets caught out, 2-man rooted, but look at the follow-up from his teammate. It's not going to be enough, though. Unfortunately, the damage not quite there from Hydrogen. Sarpei did have the ultimate available. Dragon caught backing, but Sarpei a fair distance behind him. That passive could come in handy, though, once the 2 comes back up. But I don't think Sarpei's looking for the chase. Instead, the Wargs are going to try and pick up this middle tower.
Enhanced Fire Giant for 30 more seconds. Leon, 40 seconds left on the respawn. The Niflheim Wargs want to answer back with aggression. Got a good deal of time to play with. Oni Fury could help out a fair deal on the next Fire Giant. That said, I still think the Niflheim Wargs, despite losing out on the most valuable Phoenix, despite having that wave pushed so far up into their base, should be able to regroup and try yet again to put up a defense around the Fire Giant. But they know now what their Achilles heel is, and it's Snatty. You can't allow him to work his way into the backline. 1-man knock up, not a big deal. Even 2, as long as it's in both Angry and Spudio, probably not a massive deal. But 3 in the last team fight is what it took for the Yomi Tanuki to kill just 2 members of the Wargs, and every single time Angry has stepped up, we've seen what his damage output looks like. So I agree with the Wargs here. Send over Kana to the left side of the map. Have him push out these waves. Has been taken notice of. Yomi Tanuki pinging him out, realizing they will have an advantage around this Pyromancer fight. But I would love to see the Wargs step up and defend around the Fire Giant pit itself.
I think it's truly astonishing and maybe a testament to just the power of the Niflheim Wargs, that despite both times this Fire Giant goes down being in favor of the Tanukis, in reality, they haven't really been able to get a lot from it. You know, they've got a couple structures here or there, opened up 1 Phoenix, but these fights have still been relatively even, all things considered.
Yeah, it's just so difficult to fight into Angry. Thoth plus Thanatos is just a filthy combo, and that Angry is going to set up for that execute just about every time. Dragon lines up against Kana, gets the better end of that 1v1, but Kana's got a healer on his team, so should be ready to fight yet again very shortly. Caduceus shield plus Soul Eater, and he could resustain himself given a moment's notice. Fire Giant surrounded by the Chaos team, and it's Leon leaping in.
Snatty finds 3 people with the knock-up, though, but the follow-up isn't quite there this time around Dragon. Right in the backline, looking to find Angry, but the damage from the Thoth is so good. Dragon is going to fall down, but Angry falls down in trade. 2 for Tripno so far, and the health bars from both teams are falling so low. Connor should be the next casualty of war here, but look at the health that he just regained from his passive, and that too. Sarpei now answers back with that double kill. Should be able to find a 3rd one here, but scratch that. Some beautiful body blocks by Elion to close out the life of the jungler. Preds almost certainly takes a spill here now, and with only Connor left standing, Niflheim, one Phoenix is already down in maybe the biggest upset we've seen so far this week. Yomi Tanuki win the game against the Wargs.
Well, there still is one member alive. Kana might have the opportunity to fight in. He's got decent damage output, and Hydrogen still low HP. That's good damage.
Gonna have to be a miracle play from Connor, though. Still 3 people with a decent amount of damage line up into him, but Niflheim, I think I definitely may have spoken too soon. Angry's got 10 seconds left on the board, and I don't think the Yomi Tanuki have enough damage to shred the Titan in 10.
They might be able to work their way over to the left side of the map. Not even. Kana's already there. Yeah, the Titan is too healthy. Hydrogen too low HP. I think going for the right side Phoenix is probably the correct call. You'll still have the advantage. Yomi Tanuki, that is, around the Fire Giant pit. Take a peek at the wards, still favoring them as they all head back to base. They'll be able to pick up elixirs, finish up their builds, 4 sentry wards, make that 5 in pocket as opposed to the 3 on the side of the Wargs. And the Wargs have not got vision on the map. So if they were struggling to find a defense on Fire Giant last time, you got to think that Tanuki will have an even easier time this time around.
Man, I'm going to feel real bad if the Niflheim Wargs come back from this after I already called the game in the Tanuki's favor. As the Fire Giant once again here at half HP. This time Angry does have an angle on it, but way too soon. And once again, 38 minutes into the game, 2 birds dead. Well, sorry, one and a most of a bird down here for the Yomi Tanukis. That left side Phoenix super weak right now. A 3rd Fire Giant, another enhanced Fire Giant at that Niflheim. And the Niflheim Wargs have got to pull out something special.
Yomi Tanuki with a double hunter composition and 1 hobbled bird on the left-hand side. Only a couple of auto attacks from either Hydrogen or Tripno is all it's going to take it down. Yomi Tanuki, though, seem to be pushing every single lane. They want to have pressure everywhere on the map. Keep the Niflheim Wargs on the back foot. Looking at that right-hand side, Fireman Wave's already approaching the base of the Order side. Tanuki in a very good position to continue their siege. Everything riding on the shoulders of Angry. He's been doing so much for his team, topping the damage charts at 37.5 thousand. But still needs to do more if he wants to dig his team out of this hole.
We asked the Wargs and they said Snaddy was the most player they were the most afraid of here in this matchup. And he has so far been a giant problem now, getting aggressive onto this team. Already at half HP though, and look at this positioning from Sarpei. Could be looking to come down and kill the World Serpent, and he is in a lot of trouble. The shell is popped, but Sarpei gets baited into a corner. Prance here is going to fall down as well to the Suns. Niflheim, 2 people down already for the Niflheim Wargs, and the Tanuki have just got to push down this left Phoenix. The world on the shoulders of these 3 carries, but Tanuki aren't getting too aggressive. They want to clean up these birds first. They want to play this cleanly and as strategically as they can. The Titan's already missing 1/3 of its HP from that wave in the right lane. It's just this middle Phoenix that Tanuki seem eager to pick up.
Yeah, here's the thing about there's 40 seconds left on the respawns. There is Snaddy in first, put some damage into Angry, but it was all about the bird, which has already fallen.
And now the Titan is the only target. Take a look at those health bars, ladies and gentlemen. While the Yomi Tanuki may be low, it's not going to be enough to stop them from taking the game and putting themselves cleanly into that winner's side of the bracket.
That was an impressive match. And I'm so surprised to see the defense rooted anywhere but inside their own Phoenix every single time. We saw a defense that was Angry, sitting inside the Phoenix with that unofficial 6-man just dealing immense damage. But this time it's Snaddy who steps forward, gets dropped low. I'd assume the Jormungandr would fall down for that aggressive World Serpent. But instead, it was a bait. He gets dropped low, and all he does is force out the Thanatos ultimate. That's a free kill on a Sarpei. It was an overcommitment from Angry as well, who's then on the back foot trying to chase out a kill on a Jormungandr in neutral territory. Just a clean team fight from there. LAO's shot calling probably deserves some credit, so I'll do it now. Good stuff.
Well, we've been talking to Snaddy a lot over the last few days. In fact, we caught up with him in the break room this morning, and he was saying, you know, I'm 2-11 in LAN events so far. This is the most confident that Snaddy has been feeling in a LAN environment, and it shows. The man popped off on Jormungandr, and we're going to see them over on the winner side of the bracket in just a little bit. But we've got another best of 1 set to bring to you guys after this. So I'm here to educate some of the American members of our audience on how things happen across the pond. And to help me, I've got the perfect team. We have the Highland Wargs. Nope, that's wrong. I've got the Niflheim Wargs in studio for their games today, and they're going to help me out by telling me some of the incredible different names that we have for different things. Go ahead and give me a fire giant call. What does that sound like in your guys' comms?
Hey up boys, let's tackle the FG.
Tackling the FG, gonna grab it by both sides and take it to the ground. If you were calling out to attack the right Phoenix, how would you go about doing that?
Well, you see, I'm Geordie, so you see, so my accent really comes out sometimes.
Of course.
So I'll be like, right, come on then, pets. We'll go to the right Phoenix. We'll see if we can knock this one down, yeah? And yeah, the boys come.
The boys roll up to knock down the Phoenix. So, tell us some of the kind of things that you'll be saying to the players during picks and bans.
I'd be telling them, and they've just got to because it's because it's that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing I say, yeah.
Welcome back to the SMITE Masters Tournament. The Yomi Tanuki win their first best of one here today to start things off strong, but the SPL wouldn't be complete without our good friends over at Alienware. Thanks so much to Alienware for sponsoring us once more time here in Season 9 of the SPL. Make sure that you go check them out on their social medias on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and also go to alienwarearena.com. Check out all the cool things they've got going between the stuff that they sell out there and all the cool giveaways that they do. Once again, thank you so much to Alienware for coming out here. Make sure you also check out the Aurora Ryzen 10 desktops that our pros are playing on at home and here in the studio. Check out all the cool specs there. Thank you one more time, Alienware, for being here in Season 9 of the SPL. J-Mac, I got Ro with me here to break down that game. A very close battle for pretty much the entirety of that game up until that last little fire giant pull that we saw, kind of that enhanced fire giant dance going around there. So much back and forth action, but the team fighting is really where it came down for the Tanuki to get that win.
Look, there was team fighting for 20 minutes as well. It was going back and forward. One team would win a team fight, another would get an objective on the other side of the map, some free farm on the other side of the map. So it stayed relatively even. We saw Wargs get about a 3k lead, and then it evened up quickly after that. And then it was all down to like these big team fights. There was some good fire giant calls by the looks of it on the side of the Tanuki, because when you have an Executioner Osiris, you have a double ADC, you're going to burn these objectives really fast. You're pretty effective zoning with a Xingqian and a in stealth Yomi. We ended up finding a 3-man knockup, but Seder Dragon, probably one of your MVPs for this match, just chopping down people as Osiris.
I mean, maybe this is why we've been seeing that Osiris ban on the side of the Eldritch Hound specifically. I mean, that was a ban that they did not want the Gladiators specifically to get, or maybe it was just a in general ban that they just did not want to have to deal with during their time here. Maybe this is a good look. That's exactly why. Seder Dragon with a 2.33 to end out this one for his KDA. Nearly 18,000 damage of his own, and just the amount of 1v1s he was able to take up against players like Sarpé, even Spudio as well, just really made him a valuable player in this match.
Yeah, and he ends up with that mannequins as well, so you can kind of just slam your face into the enemy hunter and you'll probably win that matchup. He had the Spectral online. I think for a short time he had, I'm not sure actually, it was Snatty who had the Witchblade, so if they're diving together, generally they're going to outbox that ADC together. And we see, in this meta, ADC is pretty important. Tanuki having 2 of their own as well. The Chernobog went towards mid lane, which was interesting to me. I guess, they prefer the Hou-Yi in the dual lane, which is fair. We saw some good, I didn't think we see too many Chernobog rotations, but using that ult for A, vision, and B to slow the enemy down was really important.
5, 3, and 4 for Seder Dragon, Tripno 3, 3, 7, and then a 4, 1, and 5 for Hydrogen on this Hou-Yi. A pick that Hydrogen specifically really likes to go to. We saw some highlights from him out of all of there. Now, even though the Yomi Tanuki won, I do have to give some credit to the Wargs for their damage output here. Nearly 30k on Spudio, 40,000 for Kana, and over 43 for Angry.
Yeah.
So the damage was definitely there. Unfortunately for the Wargs, that they just weren't able to close out enough of those kills.
Yeah, look, it was just a lot of poke, I think, and sustain from the Wargs that gave them those big numbers. But when the fights really came down to it, and especially those objectives, the objective DPS from those double hunters and the Osiris, that's what ended up mattering for the Yomi Tanuki, the winning team in the end. Being able to chop down that back line and kind of almost ignore that ignore the dive from like Thanatos, for example. It helped a lot, and you just. If you can take care of an Izanami and an Athoth, then they have no team fight left after that.
Yeah, the objective really was the name of the game for both these teams. It's something that even Spudio at the Wargs talked about, making sure that they need to lock down. And they did well for that one, but it was the Yomi Tanuki at the end, getting that Fire Giant and getting those team fights here. And we've got the newest addition to the Tanuki here for our post-game interview, Elion, the support player on this team here. First off, congrats on your win to start things out here. And kind of talking maybe a little bit about that game. You're new onto the roster. How does that, what kind of adjustments did you guys have to make coming into this event, bringing yourself onto the team?
I think it's just a lot of young guys, super talented players, and I think as support, I feel like it allows you to really control the map because you don't really need to focus on mechanics. Just focus on your rotations and focus on the macro play of the map. And these guys trust me. They respect that I've just been playing. I've been doing this for a long time. And right now we're honestly still learning together. Obviously, it's a new meta, so just little by little, just trying to make steps forward.
And how important is it for you guys to find a win? It's only a best of one. It kind of is a quote-unquote like seeding kind of style thing. But how important is it to get that first win? That way you can put yourselves maybe to where you only need one more set to qualify to the next day.
I think it's super important, even if just like you said, it's a best of one. But I think it's important just for our morale and us as a team. We haven't really had a lot of practice together. So coming out and winning the game, winning this game was really big also versus the number one SECU team. So we're just happy. We're just gonna keep going with the flow, and it's good motivation.
Yeah, and after this matchup, obviously there's one more best of one. That one's between Hex Mambo and the Xibalba Storm. Is there a preference on those two teams that you would rather face in that best of three to maybe give yourselves a better chance to move on?
I love the Storm team. Obviously, there's a lot of my old teammates and friends, so I would love to just play versus them, just to run it down. Yeah,
could always be a fun time out over there. Well, thank you so much, Leon, for coming over for the interview. Congrats on your win. I'll list you back to the team. That way you can get ready for your next match.
Appreciate it, man.
Mm-hmm. Good times out of everything here, and I think something important is something that we talked about at the beginning of the day. When a team can trust a player like Elion to come in from having his multiple roles and being able to say, hey, we know it's a LAN event. This is basically going to be our first real time playing with you on here. That's a level of trust that you got to respect.
Yeah, I mean, look, he just brings a level head and not even overconfidence either. You know, they're just here to play, just here to learn. It's all going to be a big learning experience for them. You know, this is a long tournament if they can make it through. So just taking one step at a time, one game at a time. That was just the best of one. So not, you know, overrating themselves. You're not just saying like we smashed the number one EU SEC team. EU suck. You know, we don't see that like we used to see in the back in the day. You know, this was the number 4 NA team beating the number 1 EU team. We saw the opposite yesterday, and that kind of, you know, it ended up again in the opposite way with the NA teams winning. So maybe, you know, we'll see if Tanuki can switch it up a little bit and keep that dominance over the enemy region.
Yeah, maybe we do see a little bit of a flip back here, though that would require, obviously, these guys to lose their next set and then the Wargs to win out and theirs one. So as we see, as our first best of one is now complete, Niflheim Wargs move down to the 4th match that will be happening today. Yomi and Tanuki move on to the 3rd match. They'll await the winners of Hex, Mambo, and Shibalba Storm. That's going to be coming up next. Loser of that one will then face off against the Wargs for elimination. Winner of match 3 will qualify onward to move into group 3 to face off against the 2 NA teams that have already qualified yesterday. So it's going to be a tough knit competition here between all 4 of these teams, really. Any of them can take it, very similar to yesterday, where any of those matchups could go either way. Fortunate, at least for the NA boys, they were both able to find their wins.
Yeah, I mean, look, early on saying he would prefer to face the Storm in the next. Well, I mean, it didn't look like, you know, he wasn't saying that because, you know, he might think they were easier opponents or anything like that. It's just friends, you know. They want to beat. When I'm, you know, growing up, I want to beat my brothers at their competition. You know, the same kind of thing. That long-term friends. So, you know, he wants to see the Storm beat the Mumbo. We'll see if that can happen.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough competition between both of those ones there. I mean, between the rosters that are here for both of these two teams, Shibalba Storm has some of that veteran talent there with players like Uzi, players like Oceans, and some kind of rookies to the scene via the way of Magic Feed and even Zen. They're going up against a very dangerous squad in Hex Mambo. A lot of veteran talent in that squad. We'll have to see which one of those comes out on top. We're going to take to a quick break, and we'll come back with our second set right after.